Hello and welcome to this week's Talking Codswallop. Now, unfortunately, on this episode, I don't have either of my wonderful co-hosts, Gemma or Joanne, so you're going to have to put up with me. But being the great person I am, I have brought a wonderful guest on, a truly wonderful guest, to have a chat with us, and we can learn more about this wonderful author, Christen Stovall. Christen, how are you doing?
Well, really well after that introduction.
And I just want to check. I didn't butcher your surname, did I?
What was that?
I didn't butcher your surname, did I, when I pronounced it?
You did not. You got it just right.
Excellent. So, Christen, obviously, thank you for coming on to Talking Codswallop to talk to us and tell us a bit about yourself. I always like to start out by saying, tell us your background. Where does your story begin, Christen?
Well, my story begins being a little girl in the Kansas countryside and just always dreaming of far-off places, adventures. I was always looking for a door to Narnia, like everywhere. There had to be one somewhere. I was sure of this.
Oh, was it? So it wasn't Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz then?
No, I had that too, but that involved a tornado, and that hits a little close to home when you live in Kansas. I was also looking for doorways to Middle Earth as well, because huge Tolkien fan.
Nice.
And then I grew up, and I started doing stage and theater work, and I realized I wanted to tell my own stories. It wasn't enough to just take a character that someone else had written, but I wanted to create my own characters and build from there. And graduated high school, did the thing where I met a young man and got married, and I thought I had my life set up. And then about a year and a half after we married, he took his own life after dealing with chronic pain and depression for a while. So I was left going, oh my God, what do I do now? Everything I planned is gone. And that's where I came up with the concept of the Soulbound and turned that into a book, which turned into a trilogy and now a prequel. And now I've co-written a completely unrelated series. So it just sort of snowballed after that. Here I am.
Well, I'm sorry to hear what happened with your husband, but obviously you've done an amazing thing and taken something very difficult and made it into something positive. Interesting, when we're looking back at your earlier days, you mentioned a bit that you've been involved in sort of the creative arts. So when you were a little girl, what did you want to do? You sort of said, what you obviously mentioned creative things, but what was you wanted to be? Who did you aspire to become?
Well, when I was really little, my first memory is I wanted to be Robin Hood.
Oh, nice. See,
or Looper, one of those.
I like it. I wanted to be Optimus Prime. So
nice. The details of the fact that I was a girl and there were no Jedi, and also, I didn't live anywhere near Sherwood Forest. None of these things stopped me up. I was going to be Robin Hood or Luke Skywalker, obviously.
But at least you had chosen sort of human, attainable characters. I wanted a robot.
Well, to each their own. I did watch Transformers when I was little. I liked Bumblebee. Yes.
See, when I was a kid, it wasn't so much Bumblebee. It was always Optimus Prime was like the coolest character to me.
The biggest robot.
Yeah, worrying as I've got older, I find myself thinking that the Decepticons are the more interesting characters, actually. So, but I don't know. I always like the villains in stories now. I find them far more interesting.
They can be a lot of fun to write as well. I really enjoy them.
So obviously you'd wanted to be those characters, which is very, very cool. I like that. You obviously mentioned about the reasons you got into becoming a novelist with the loss of your husband. But when it comes to your actual writing, who is it that influences you? Are there any particular? You mentioned Tolkien. Are there any other sort of novelists you look at all?
There's another novelist named Juliet Marlier, and I really, really love her work. I believe she's Australian, but I'm not entirely certain. I like what she writes. I don't stalk what she's doing in real life. So I'm like, I don't care where she's from. I like what she's writing. So I really enjoy her work.
And what was it that obviously with the difficult situation with what had happened, what was it that made you particularly think, right, I'll start writing as a way of dealing with that?
Well, I had started writing just for my own enjoyment in my late teens and early 20s, and I had been doing that. And then I got sort of sidetracked by, you leave the house, you're confronted with real life and bills, and then, getting married and the mortgage and all of those things. So once I got married, it just sort of kept getting pushed further and further back because I was, busy dealing with those annoying real life concerns.
Yeah, so I was going to say it's the horrible reality of becoming an adult.
Right, exactly. And then once he was gone, I turned back to it. But it's always been this love of fantasy. I realize now, looking back, that even before I started writing, I was very much into storytelling, and I always wanted to read these books about far off places and adventures, and almost exclusively fantasy, although I do read a few other things as well. I enjoy historical novels. I love to study ancient history. I love to study British history. Yeah, the prequel to my trilogy, I did take some inspiration from what happened with like Arthur and Henry VIII and Catherine of Aragon. So I definitely took some inspiration from that in terms of all of those things, although stuff plays out very differently for those characters.
Interesting. And what particular, you were mentioning obviously the periods of English history. What sort of periods you mentioned Arthur, but obviously that's mythical. So what kind of particular periods interest you when it came to studying and looking at?
Tudor history.
Excellent. Why Tudor?
Anne Boleyn is my very favorite historical figure. I find her fascinating. I also find the changes in Henry VIII throughout his reign very fascinating, and how much who he wanted at that time sort of dictated a lot of his decision making. It's a very interesting period in your history, and then it brought about Elizabeth, which is also amazing. And I love a lot of the Renaissance things that were going on. The way there was a shift in politics, in religion, and how much it shaped the world. Today. It's so fascinating. Like, on my bucket list is to get to Hever Castle. That's huge on my bucket list. One day I'm gonna go there.
So when I was looking to your work, let's hope I get the pronunciation right. The Fae-Touched Chronicles. Have I pronounced that correctly?
You did. Well done.
Thank you. So I've not mangled anything yet on my pronunciation. So
no.
That's a joint endeavour of work you do with Jennifer Sanders, and yes. I'd love to know how does that kind of collaboration come about, working with a different author?
Well, we've known each other for over 20 years, and in fact, she was around when I was just a little baby writer cutting my teeth, and a lot of, because she's older than I am, so she influenced me a great deal as well, and influenced my writing style and how I developed. And we had written the first story just for fun, as like a birthday present to me, because I wanted to write something with her. And then I decided this other character she created also needed a story, so then we wrote that, which ended up being the third book. And here last year, I was just sort of playing around with them, and I messaged her, and I was like, I was thinking about this character Ross, and I think this is his story. And so we started talking about it, and she goes, these would make good books. And well, I've been wanting to do that for years, but we can't just do his story. We'd have to do all of them. And that's where it started. And it's really fun the way we do it. We don't take turns writing chapters or scenes. We each take characters, and then we get in a shared document that we can interact in real time. And like, if she's writing the male love interest, I'll write the female love interest, and we'll literally just go back and forth in real time, like as characters, through like having the conversation or going through the action. And of course we have to decide whose point of view we're in and what needs to happen in the scene, but it's interesting, it's very collaborative, it's very social. I won't know what her character is going to say or how her character is going to react to what my character does. And then it took place in Victorian Scotland, there's some stuff in London. It takes place, the first one, it's shortly after the last confirmed Jack the Ripper killing. So we did a lot of research and a lot of studying, and we have a British friend, and we were like, okay, does this make sense? Is this how you talk? Does this work? And so she would go, no, we don't say that. All right, we're going to fix it. What do you say? So it's a lot of fun. It was just so much fun. I miss those characters already. They're still in my head.
I mean, as soon as you mentioned Jack the Ripper, that's one of the things I find, the whole Jack the Ripper situation, what happened, and the mythos that's come from that, and also the roll off of fiction that's come from that. Mm-hmm. You put that in front of me, I'm happy as Larry for reading anything about that at all. It really keeps me focused. Now, it was interesting when you talk about you take turns on writing different characters, different genders. Who do you find easiest to write, a female protagonist or a male protagonist?
To a degree, it depends on the character in the story, but I do tend to really enjoy writing male characters, which is funny because in the Fae-Touched Chronicles, like, my co-author wrote most of them. I only wrote the leading man for the second book, and then she made me pick up some of the characters she usually plays for some of the others, and I would be like, but I don't know how to make him like him. But I enjoy writing the male characters. I think I enjoy writing each character in their own way, though.
And because obviously, again, I return to the thing of both you writing the novel. What's the most challenging aspect of it?
It often depends on the book. Some of them, they just flow, and it's just perfect. Others, sometimes the beginning, I often find the beginning the most challenging aspect, just because the heart of the story is later on that I want to get to. All of the action or the dramatic scenes, those are later on. But the beginning, you have to get all of the setup, and you have to make sure all of those pieces are fit correctly so that you can make sure that what you have planned later makes sense. So that's always the most challenging to me.
You've almost, because I love it when this happens. You preempted a question, which is, I was kind of wondering, when you've got like a trilogy of larger on something you're writing, do you start with just like saying, okay, this is exactly where we want it to end, or I was intrigued on the way when you were mentioning that. I was always wondering, do you go, right, this is exactly how it's going to end? Or can you find yourself working on the principle of having that ending, then things will change as you're writing?
I'm one who usually has to have things sort of very outlined. I do leave some up to chance. With the trilogy, I knew that it could have one of two endings, and I did not decide which ending until I was almost done with the second book. So it's a little bit dependent upon the project, but I tend to need to know what's going to happen. There are authors who can just sort of write on the fly, and their characters take over, and they don't necessarily know where it's going to end. I am not one of those, and I have to write linearly. I have to write in order. If I don't know what happened before, then I'm going to be completely lost later on. Like it has to be very organized in my brain. And the other thing is, I know that if I skip to the parts I really want to write, I will never go back and write those things that are so important, that build the foundation, because they're not as much fun to write. But yeah, I definitely outline. I usually know the ending. If I don't know the exact ending, I know what the options are. And then as I go and as the story develops, I know which one needs to be the one that I go with.
As someone who's not a writer, I have to ask the question. You hear about like athletes, you hear about musicians. Prior to you doing all your writing, do you have a warm-up sort of exercise you do to get yourself in the zone?
Yeah, I usually listen to a lot of cinematic music. Yeah, if I'm going to be writing a sad scene, I'll listen to this sort of sad, dramatic music. If it's action, I'll listen to like this very upbeat, like battle music, anything like that works for that scene. And then for love scenes, I will go listen to sappy love songs.
So what is your sappy love song of choice then?
It depends on the characters. Each couple has their own song that fits their romance, that fits their personalities. So it absolutely depends on their characters. Now with the action scenes, I have ones that I'll tend to gravitate toward, but with the love songs, it differs per couple.
Yeah, because I'm trying to think, like, for me, yeah, there are certainly specific pieces of music. We actually had a wee bit of a conversation before we did record, didn't we, where I sent you a suggestion, a piece of music to listen to. So, yeah, there are certain
things. And
I did. And I'm hoping it worked. Yes, I always have little choices of music, I guess, for myself, if I think about it. But I'm doing things that will pump me up. Like, I've got to give a speech, and I've done that in the past. There'll be something I'll choose for that that'll get me prepared for it. One of the things I really, really like on your website is you have these little videos which go with the novels, and I've not really seen that on that many sites. So do you, it really sells the whole experience and the process of the novel. That's like a really cool little thing. How much involvement do you actually have in the little movies that are on?
I make them myself.
Wow.
I have video editing software, and I make them, and it's one of those things where I can still be working on the books in some way, but it's very detail oriented. You time it out. You look at, this clip needs to go and start at this moment to match the music, and this clip works with this background. It's sort of very soothing to me to just sit there and do that detail-oriented, focused work. And I think that that's where, like, my background in theater and just love of the cinema help.
And, well, they're really good. And do you get a say in the, because obviously using something like, well, in fact, this is what I always wanted to ask someone who writes, the models on the covers, do you get any say in who they are? Do you get to, like, do a proof viewing of what's going out?
Oh, yeah. Oftentimes, now with the trilogy and with the prequel, I actually made the cover for the prequel, the front cover. I did that myself. And then for the trilogy, the Song of Souls trilogy, my sister did those. And it's actually her and her husband in some of the pictures, but just heavily edited. And then for the Fae-Touched Chronicles, yes, we had absolute full say in what the characters looked like. In fact, we would go to these websites where you can look at the models and look at the clothes and all of that, and we would find the ones that we liked and then send them to the cover artist, and she would put them together. So usually put the faces on the different bodies with the appropriate clothing.
Because the one that I really like for the Fae-Touched Chronicles, and I found it was so interesting today because I knew I was going to be talking to you, was the Lady the Loch one. Because I'm thinking, great. Interesting Loch Ness Monster sort of stuff. And then today, I don't know if you've seen on the news, they're saying it could be, I'll put, air quotes, could be plausible the Loch Ness Monster could exist because of some kind of fossilized stuff they found around.
Oh, I haven't seen that yet today. It might take a little while to filter over across the pond. So, no, I've always loved stories of Nessie, and I've just decided I don't care what they ever prove or disprove. I'm going to believe in it because I want to. I want that little bit of the fantastic to exist.
I like it. That's a very positive way of looking at the things. So you obviously created a trilogy of novels, which is the Song of the Souls novels, and that was you on your own. So we've discussed what it's like when you've worked with Jennifer Sanders. What is the difficulty of working alone? The positives and the negatives, you say, if it been completely your baby at that point and it's all in your hands.
Yeah. The positives are that I can be very, very structured and work on the time that I want to work. When I'm writing on my own, I keep business hours for my writing, and I have a word goal that I hit every day, and I can't really impose that on my co-author, and that can get very frustrating for me because I'm a goal-oriented person, so if I set a goal, I'm much more likely to be efficient in my work habits. I also enjoy that, like, I get to have all the say in what happens. And it gets to just be my world and my creation. And I also tend to want to write much more in the fantasy genre. Like, that's where I want to be. That's where I'm comfortable. I did enjoy with the Fae-Touched Chronicles the fact that it pushed me and stretched me outside of my comfort zone. So I enjoyed that aspect, and I enjoy the social aspect of writing with somebody. When it comes to writing on my own, I also tend to write much longer books because I don't like to read short books. I want a big book where I get to be like with those characters for a long time. Probably the one I enjoyed doing the most was the prequel to the Song of Souls trilogy, which is The Twisted Path, and that one's a big one. That one is very thick.
I swear, Christen, you must be like doing mind reading with me. I just wanted to ask you about creating a prequel. So you've obviously got the books you've written. Is creating a prequel more challenging, or is it more rewarding? I mean, how do you pull all that together? Because you'd written out the trilogy. Does it become a bit difficult? Do you ever find yourself sort of going, "Oh God, I can't put that part because it might cause me an issue with something I've already written"? Or I'm intrigued. How is a prequel put together?
Well, in the case of this prequel, it does take place about 200 years before, so there is some wiggle room because titles can change, where people lived change in 200 years, and it's sort of set in a medieval type time. So, record keeping wasn't super amazing and efficient there. So it's completely plausible that there would be some details that would be different and some things that would change through the course of 200 years. I knew a lot of what happened in the prequels as I was writing the trilogy. So more so I was building the trilogy knowing that lore existed, knowing that those people existed. I didn't know their names. I didn't know some of the details of what they went through, but I knew the broad strokes of the story. And then those small details, like the intimate details of the characters, don't necessarily apply to what happens 200 years later in a world, because those characters and that group of people, they don't know the intimate
this is
details.
True,
yeah. But it was my favorite to write in terms of I had made just sort of this developmental leap as an author, and I was just in the zone. It was an almost 600-page book once I got done, and I wrote the first draft in 3 months. I was in the zone. Like, I couldn't put it down. I knew where these characters needed to go, and I had them sort of mentally cast, which I always do. I always had the characters mentally cast with actors or face models, and actually get to meet the actor who I mentally cast as the leading man in the prequel in just a little over a week.
Oh, can I ask who? Can you tell me more?
I can. His name is Toby Regbo. He's a British actor. So he just fit the character perfectly. And for me, it's not just their physical appearance. It's also something they'll give in a performance, and I've always felt that he gives a sort of quiet intensity, which was very important for that character. So he's going to get a book handed over to him in a little over a week. It's at this limited ticket event about 3 hours from where I live, and I actually found out about it because of a book club who read the book, because one of the members had seen the cover and said, "Oh, that could be Toby Regbo," and I mean, it was just somebody from behind, so they couldn't really see his face. It was just because I did that cover, and you just see the hair in the back, and I went, "Ha ha, funny you should say that." And then this book club decided to read it, and then I said, "Well, if you guys do, let me know, and I'd be happy to do a video chat with you when you meet to discuss it." So I got to do that, and then they told me about this group that does these events, and said that he would be attending one this summer, and I should go, and now I am. So it's really funny. I'm actually going to meet him because of his fans.
That's absolutely brilliant. That's a really good thing. I mean, it kind of ties into what my next question was going to be, which is, you obviously have attended conventions, you go into things like that. What's your interaction with your fan base like?
I'm just now getting to the point where I am hearing, oh, I've heard of these. And then at my last convention, which was a local one, I was sitting at my table and working, just talking to people as they went. And this young woman came up and she was like, oh, I'm reading that right now. And I went, are you enjoying it? And she goes, oh, yeah, I love it. And I was like, well, that makes me happy to hear. And then I don't know what came up. But I said, oh, yeah, no, I wrote it. And she went, you're the author? And her eyes got huge. And I was like, yeah. I was like, and she went, oh, I got it at our local coffee shop and bookstore. And I went, oh, yeah, I love that place. It's a great place. They treat me really well. It's my favorite place in town. And she went, you live here? I was like, yeah, like 5 minutes from here. So that was a really fun experience. It's always really, it's overwhelming and humbling and thrilling when somebody says that your work impacted them. And right now I'm still at the point where when people do that, I'm like, I'm just me. I'm just a big dork. My brain is just like, why are you excited to meet me? It doesn't click in that I'm exciting to meet.
Well, the simple answer is you've created something wonderful. That's why people like the interaction with you.
Thank you.
So you've had the experience of someone being sort of like, having the fan moment and being awestruck meeting you. Have you ever had that yourself with somebody?
Yes, although I tend to try to play it very cool and just treat them like a person. But I did get to meet Billy Boyd, who played Pippin in the Rings, and he's my favorite Hobbit. I went to a convention. This was back when I was just attending just for fun. And that was really, really cool. He was so awesome and so sweet. And I'm hoping I'll also be able to play it cool when I meet Toby Regbo.
I'm sure you will.
Sure.
I'm sure you'll do it.
But I am gonna. He actually does know that I based this character off of him. So hopefully when I hand him the book, he'll remember. And I'm attending just to attend. This is not something I'm doing professionally. I'm just going because I want to go, and I get to meet some of these ladies from that book club face to face, and I'm as excited about meeting them as meeting Toby. So, because they're very cool ladies.
That's always wonderful to hear. Now, prior to this, I think I've had a little bit of a, the door's open. I've seen a little chink into this, chink of light and information into this. But I was going to say, you talk about the writing process. You talk about the fact that, you keep these strict hours to focus yourself. And what I wanted to know is, how do you keep the energy levels up? Now, I have a theory from something I've read that it's sugar-based products that will keep you going. From a little conversation we had, I'm giving the Salty Tadpoles, the listeners, an indication to a conversation we had prior to recording, which is we talk about keeping energy levels up with sugar. Is this definitely the case then, Christen?
Well, it's more coffee than sugar anymore.
I'm so.
But like I said, I'm trying not to eat a lot of sugar anymore. But I do have my little rewards. I get to have my little reward if I did good. If I did a good job, I get my reward for the day. I usually have. The other thing is, if I have to do something really mean to a character or kill one, I'm like, I have to have wine for this. The wine must be here. The tissue's on the other side.
So that's a really interesting thing. So when you talk about, because obviously you, as the author, the creator of these characters, you'll become invested in them. And we as readers, when certain things will happen to them, will have an emotional response. So if you have to do something that's kind of going to be life-changing or, earth-shattering to a character, does it become a kind of like a moral battle within you about how you're going to do it? Or are you like, nope, I've got to do this. It's the process, and you just power through?
Well, when it comes to writing mean things, putting my characters through hell, those are my favorite parts to write.
Excellent.
The truth is, I think a lot of authors, that's the case. We get to like let out our frustrations on our characters. When it comes to killing off a character, and with the prequel, I got far more attached to some characters that I had to kill off. I knew I had to kill them off. I got far more attached to them than I thought I was going to, and that was really, really hard. And I will be sitting at my computer sobbing while I'm writing this, while they're, while a character's dying. I'll just be sitting there like I've had like the next day I'll come back and there'll be these little tear stains on my computer. And then when I edit them, I sob all over again. And it does get really hard. And what's interesting is I always hear my character's voices, not in a like psychotic way, but I know what they sound like. I can hear them speaking when I write lines and everything. And once I kill off a character and I finish that final editing wash, I won't hear them anymore. And it's really sad. Like there's just this silence where that character's voice used to be. So it's a little sad to say goodbye to them in that way and to feel that absence. Because my characters become it's like they exist in a little green room inside my head, and I know, who they are and what they want, and occasionally something will happen and like I'll just know that a character would react to such and such in a certain way, and they stick with me. I do love my characters. They stick with me.
And do you ever find it that if there's a character you particularly don't like that you're writing, do you ever base it on people you don't like and use it as a way of punishment? And vice versa. If it's just someone you might like that you base it on.
I do have a few that I've based on friends. Loosely, you can get caught very easily in your own head when you base it too closely on someone, because then you start to think, oh, but would my friend react this way? So you have to, while they will be based on my friends, I also will tell my friends, one, that this character is based off of them, but then say they're based off of you. So just because you might react a certain way in that situation, it doesn't mean that that character will react that way, because I need that character to react in the way that serves the story. But there are a few that are based off friends. I have yet to base any off of enemies. I don't really have that many enemies. Like I tend to just try to love everybody and not dislike anyone. I think it's really important to act from a place of love with everybody. But I have jokingly threatened to kill people in books. I'm going to make you a character and kill you. It's generally like with a friend and they're just being ornery, so I'm being ornery right back.
It reminds me somewhat of one of my friends who will occasionally, he only writes things as, fan fiction style stuff, but he once said to me, I've been thinking about writing a story based around you, and I was like, okay, that's interesting. And he said, it's kind of going to be like Groundhog Day. I'm like, okay, go on. But it's going to be you going, like, waking up in, say, alternate universes, and something will kill you in every single universe. Oh, and I was like, I don't know whether to be, happy about the fact and flattered that you wanted to write something about me, or concerned
that you want to kill me repeatedly. Yeah, no, that would be awkward. But usually what I get when I say that is people are like, yes, do it. Write me in a book and kill me. And I'm like, it's a little disturbing how that you are.
Yeah, my comment to my friend was like, well, okay, yeah, I guess that'll be all right.
As long as you're not playing out some fantasy.
Yeah. Well, it's more like if I was sat on my own in a room with him, I'm thinking, can I turn my back? Is it going to be safe for me to do this?
Right. Oh, yeah. So I've not killed any characters that were based on friends. I kind of tend to have a rule where if it's based on a friend, I don't want to kill them. Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean I won't maim them terribly. I might maim them terribly.
Right. Well, maiming's all right. It's not the full, you've got to come with the full.
I had one. My wizard in the trilogy is based off a very dear friend of mine who was just so supportive. after my husband died, and I told him, hey, my wizard is based off of you. And he's actually ended up being a bit of a fan favorite. And he gets hurt in one of the books, and I was like, okay, well, I'm going to hurt you really bad in this book. He's like, all right.
I was just about to say, how did it go down? But
he was absolutely on board with it. Yeah, the wizard has a beagle for a familiar, and this friend of mine has a beagle, so it's pretty. He knows the character is absolutely based off of him, and the dog is absolutely based off of his dog. So.
Now, I also wanted to ask you, Christen, because you mentioned, obviously, you try and stay away from the sugary stuff, but you keep yourself energized with coffee. And anybody who knows me, I have a major caffeine addiction. So what is your coffee? How do you normally take your coffee when you're powering through the day?
I usually have my coffee with some non-dairy, or not non-dairy. It is non-dairy, but it's also sugar-free cream. So a little bit of coffee and cream and no sugar added, and that's what I use Italian sweet creamer, but it's sugar-free. So that's usually, I also put it in my tea, though. I just really like the Italian sweet tea. Yeah, I'm a big tea drinker. I've had friends tell me I was born on the wrong continent. They're like, you really should have been born over here.
Yeah, I'm thinking... I sound terrible because obviously I'm in the UK, I'm in England, and we're known to be a nation of tea drinkers, but I don't drink tea. All I drink is coffee. It's never appealed to me, but I have my coffee black and incredibly strong. So one of the presents I was bought, it was my birthday last month, and one of the presents loads of people got me was coffee, like huge amounts of coffee, so they know me incredibly well. And I saw one of my friends recently, and he got me like I think it was about 8 or 9, proper bags of coffee. And I said, yeah, I'm down to my last one. And he's like, what?
Yeah, I tend to have 2 in the morning because I also have trouble sleeping at night because that's when my creativity kicks in is I'm laying in bed and all of a sudden my brain is going, hey, I've got an idea. Are you sleeping? So I'm very strict about when I stop drinking caffeine in the day because otherwise I'm even more likely to be up all night.
Yeah, I know that feeling, as I suspect many do, all too well, where you'll be in bed just about to drift off and some idea will hit you. It's like...
Yeah. It's been pretty bad lately because I'm really excited about this thing I'm going to. And this will be the first time I get to meet an actor face to face who in some way unknowingly helped me write a book, who in my head, that is this character. That's what this character looks like. That's what they sound like. So I'm really, really excited. So
I think that's going to be a wonderful experience for you. That sounds really, really good.
I hope I don't do anything silly like cry in front of him.
Oh, I'm sure. I doubt you will, but I'm sure it'll be fine. I've been to conventions and things. I've seen the whole gamut of the way people react to people. It's always. I'm sure it's always flattering to the person to see a positive response. So you mentioned that you can be kept awake. The ideas can hit. Do you go and straight put them down on a pad? Do you like? I'm going to sound old, but do you dictaphone them? How do you use that creativity?
I usually just have an incredibly good memory, and it's as I've written more books, it's gotten even better. My co-author, we'll sit and write outlines, and my brain will just remember what we've written.
I'm astounded. I can't remember Jack. I'd be screwed.
I will sometimes, if there's like a specific line of dialogue in my head that I've just come up with and I need that specific dialogue to be preserved, I will write it. I'll grab my phone, which is generally on the little nightstand next to my bed because it's also my alarm clock. I'll grab it and I'll write in a text draft, usually to someone that I like, a family member. So if I do accidentally send it, I can just be like, oh, this was just dialogue. Don't just ignore it. But I'll just save it in a text draft. And then the next morning when I'm up and at my computer, I'll pull up the draft and look and see what it was, or put it in a Word document to save for later if I'm not at that point in the story yet. And then I'll just delete the text draft. But that's about the only time that I will make sure I record what I wanted that character to say. Now, if it's something I'm collaborating with, if I get an idea in the middle of the night, I'll grab our little conversation on Facebook and I'll type it in there and send it to her, so then she also knows the idea, or in the morning we can discuss it, because if we're collaborating, I can't just say we're doing this just because I had the idea. So, but that's generally, I just sort of keep it in my brain. I don't know how I do it, but I do.
It's a hell of a good trick. Are you good at remembering people's names as well?
No.
If you'd said yes, I would have just been like, no, you're too good, because you can remember stuff and you can remember names, because I can't remember anything. Names are really, have always been a hard one for me. Faces, I'm great. I'm like, yeah, I know that person, but that's about all I've got.
If it's someone I've met only once or twice, then no, I'm not going to remember their name. If it's someone I see on a regular basis, I will remember their name. I think it's just because what's happened now is that my brain prioritizes the stuff I've made up and the stories, and I just sort of keep all of that in my head. And then when it comes to like real life things, like if I have to remember a date, nope, it goes straight in my phone, because I will not remember it. I will not remember the date or the time. I will have to check it 50 times before it happens. So, but yeah, as long as it's something based in one of my books, I'll remember it. Except if it's like a city name or how to spell a minor character's name. I always have to go back and look at those things and go, okay, that's what I named it.
Interesting that those pose a problem. Out of interest, when you made the decision to become an author, what were people's reactions like? You know, like family, friends, things like that. Because you sometimes hear people who go into like the creative industries, people almost take a step back. So like, are you sure? You sure you want to do this? What was the reaction from people around you? Because it sounds like from what you said, people are generally very positive. Certainly your friends, when you've told them you were going to base characters on them, even when you may do sort of strange things to those characters, they've still all been very supportive. Was it a similar experience when you said, this is what I want to do, this is what I want to make my life?
I don't think I started with, this is what I want to do, this is what I want to make my life. It started with, I'm writing this book. My family and close friends were very supportive. There was a point where it was obvious that in some way it was sort of viewed as this was my hobby and not for real. And that, you know, as the books are gaining success, as I'm publishing more books, there has been that shift, and there have been times where I've clashed with people where I'm like, no, this is my job. I can't just not do it this day. If you don't understand, if I don't do it, there's nobody to pick up the slack. This is what I do. So there's that. Once more of an acquaintance said something along the lines of, oh, I could never do that because there's no security in it. And I'm like, okay, you know, that's fine, but it's, for me, it's never been a matter of if they're successful, but when, because I didn't want to leave that window for not doing it, for not pushing, for not making it work.
And I think you hit the nail on the head of why you've been successful with it. But you know, being honest, it's the fact you've set out the stone. You've said, right, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to achieve. Because the comment you just made then of, I don't know if I could work without the security. It's very interesting. There's somebody, my family, I know, who's an author, and somebody had made the same comment. They said, I don't know if I could do it because of the lack of security. But obviously you have said this will work. This is the way I'm going to do it. And yeah, you've done very well with it, and you're creating some wonderful things. So
thank you.
I can see why that's happened, because you've gone for the brass ring. You said that's what my result will be.
Yeah, I'm a goal-oriented person, and for a while I had people saying that I was competitive, and I was like, no, I'm not competitive. I'm not competing with anyone. I have a goal, and I will get blinders, and I'll go after that goal just like crazy. But I'm not noticing what other people are. I'm not paying any attention to the fact that maybe someone else is trying to win. I have this goal I want to go after, and I'm not even like focusing on anything but getting to what it is I've set for myself. So I'm very goal oriented. If somebody wants me to do something, just give me a goal, and then I'll be like, I'm locked in. We're doing this.
And using using the goal analogy, if you could work with anyone, joint author with anybody at all, past, present, who would it be?
It would be the person I have already gotten to work with, Jennifer Sanders. Because the friendship has meant so much to me and developing and everything. So getting to write those books with her was big for me. Just because I respect her so much and I love interacting with her and creating with her. So that was always, writing something with her was always like top on my list.
The fact you've done it. That's brilliant. So
anyone else, I think I'd be absolutely intimidated by. Like if it was Juliet Marley or Tolkien, I would just sort of go and hide. I'd be like, no, I can't. I'm not worthy.
So if we took you out of the fantasy genre, what else would you kind of like to write about? Is there any kind of novels that you would like to focus on?
I don't know. Maybe historical fiction. Mm-hmm. I could enjoy that. Because it does still. I have found I don't like to write things in modern times. I'm like, I live here. I work here. This is not interesting to me. So it would definitely be, I think, historical fiction. I would enjoy that.
Interesting. Yeah, I think that could be a good thing. I mean, I do find that kind of area interesting. I like the kind of offshoot stuff because you can.
Yeah.
I mean, like we talked about the Ripper style stuff, the amount of the ways you can sort of play with and work with things of that nature.
Yeah.
Would be interesting. And assuming from what we've already kind of discussed and what you've said, you will probably be looking on this side of the pond possibly more than your side of the pond for things to write about.
Yes. All of my characters have British accents in my head.
Can't blame you.
All of them.
I cannot blame you. We've got wonderful accents here. We've got an interesting mixture of them, depending on where you go in the country.
Yes. Well, and I also like the Irish accent as well. Basically, just all over there. I was just sitting here the other day thinking, I wish I lived there instead of here. And then I live in Kansas where we have a slight twang, which I mean, I'm sure that you're hearing it, but I try very hard to not have it. And it's funny half the time because I watch a lot of British shows as well, and I'll start like just without even thinking about it using the accent, and then I'm like, wait, nope, I'm not from there.
So, which British shows do you watch?
Well, Doctor Who, for one. I love that. In fact, it was a piece of music from Doctor Who that gave me the inspiration for the scene that started my first book.
Wow.
I really love. I watched Downton Abbey for a bit, and then I got annoyed when they killed off a certain character, and now I'm shunning. Although I still go and look and watch, I peek and see what's going on. I'm trying to think of some of the other ones. Some of them, like they'll be sort of British based, but I'm not sure that they're filmed there. What are some of the other ones? I liked I think it was made for TV movie, North and South. BBC's The Musketeers. Oh,
yeah,
love that. They had a Robin Hood series that I enjoyed.
The BBC did, yeah.
Like that one. I get very annoyed because it seems like many of your shows, the ones that I like, only have like 3 seasons, and I'm not ready to say goodbye.
And they suddenly, they only have 3 seasons, or they suddenly get cancelled. So
I get so frustrated with that.
So with Doctor Who, I'm going to indulge the questioning because I have some. Interesting Doctor Who. Are you the OG original Doctor Who stuff, or are you the newer Doctor Who that you prefer?
I was introduced to it with the newer ones. First Doctor I watched was Christopher Eccleston. And then David Tennant is a favorite of mine. Love him. Also, I really love Catherine Tate. So when she was briefly a companion, I was so psyched. I was like, oh my God, it's Catherine Tate. I got to meet her at a convention. Yes, it was. And what was funny is we were actually going to meet a voice actor. And when we got there, we realized Catherine Tate was one of the guests. Well, we were walking by, and there was like this table, and nobody was really lined up, and it was early on in the day. I think that was why. And my friend goes, who actually happens to be my co-author, we went together, and she was like, "Is that Catherine Tate? Is that Catherine Tate? Don't look!" And we're like covertly glancing, like trying to play. Go, don't look. And then pretty soon, her handler comes up, and he goes, "Would you like to meet Catherine Tate?" And we went, "Can we do that?" So they dragged us over there, and she like grabbed our cell phones and was taking selfies with us, and just was absolutely wonderful to meet, and just a complete delight. I big fan of Patrick Stewart's as well. He was my introduction to Shakespeare. Nice. I remember when he was playing Captain Picard. Picard was quoting Shakespearean lines, and I was maybe in second grade, and my brain went, what he is doing is important. What is he doing? I looked over at my dad and I said, what is he doing? What is he saying? And he goes, well, he's quoting Shakespeare. And I was just like, wow. From that moment on, totally loved Shakespeare.
He's something else, Patrick Stewart. And I do like Doctor Who. I'm going to be honest, I prefer Star Trek more. I'll probably get shot by some of the people I know hearing this. They will not be too happy. But yeah, with Patrick Stewart, I mean, I've always liked his stuff in Star Trek. I've loved the new run he's done with Picard. That's been very interesting. But annoyingly, and I can tell you this, when I moved here where I live, I found out rather later on that Patrick Stewart actually he had a holiday home near me. But I've never seen him. But I was telling somebody recently I worked with who went, yeah, we'd seen him walking around town. I'm like, how the hell how did I never see him? And then I found out he'd moved. And his house went up for sale. Tip to the post.
Well. Yeah. I think it would be amazing to meet him. I don't know that I ever will, but I think it would be amazing. And I would absolutely tell him, man, you introduced me to Shakespeare. But I do remember watching, it was way back, Excalibur.
Yes.
Like, it's an older one. I remember watching that and thinking it was mildly terrifying when I was little.
I know exactly what you mean. Excalibur does have some scary bits in it. Yeah,
it's mildly terrifying, and I scare easily, and even more so when I was a little kid. So I was but I loved it anyway because there were swords and Arthurian legend and all of that. But it was mildly terrifying.
Yeah, for me as a child, it was the Arthurian legend parts. Yeah. But I also remember it had scary parts. It also had naughty parts in. As a child, I shouldn't. I wasn't allowed to see the naughty parts. I was. As I got older, I was like, wow, there are naughty parts in this.
Fits in here.
That I was not aware of. I'm going to ask the question I always like to ask, which is, what future endeavours, projects do you have that you can tell us about, Christen?
Well, I am going to be returning to the world of the Song of Souls trilogy for something that takes place shortly after the end of the trilogy with the new set of characters. In fact, I had to write the prequel first because it takes place in a country that is introduced in the prequel. And I am also currently at the beginning stages of co-writing a Next Generation Robin Hood story with Jennifer Sanders.
Whoa.
So, yeah.
Can you tell us a bit about that? I mean, you got me on you carry on with what you already said, but as soon as you mentioned Robin Hood, you can't see me, but I'm doing the old hands in the air thing.
Well, it's going to be a trilogy. The trilogy is called Sherwood Rising. Sherwood. How do you pronounce it over there? Is it Sherwood or Sherwood?
That's a very good question. I suspect it depends on where you are, but I would say Robin of Sherwood.
Sherwood. All right.
Yeah. Somebody will correct me, I'm sure, to tell me I'm pronouncing it wrong.
Very different based on the regional accent as
Sherwood?
well.
We'll go with Sherwood. Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas we say Sherwood or Sherwood. So I tend more towards Sherwood. But yeah, so it will be following Robin's child and some other characters. But the first book is called Wolf's Head, and that's the one we're just starting on now. She's working on another project, and we got a whole series out. I went from having 3 published books to having 5 in like the span of a year, so I'm a little creatively exhausted. So we're very just sort of in the beginning stages and setting it up and dabbling a little bit. We have 2 days a week that we meet up and work on it, and it's coming along. Don't want to say too much about it so far, but it follows Robin Hood's child and some children of some other historical figures that are not historically. The children are not historically based, but it does follow them as well.
That sounds that sounds good. Robin Hood was one of the first things I actually remember reading as a child and getting into that world. So it'll be interesting to see how you can expand that and look at it for a whole new generation. So
and we are incorporating some fantasy elements in it as well.
Even better.
We both enjoy having some of those in there. But I've always loved Robin Hood. My mom was actually an archery state champion, so I kind of grew up with, knowing a bit about archery and everything. And I'm not as good as she was back in the day, but it was always fun. I was always making little bows and bows out of sticks I found.
It was swords and sword fighting for me, and I can promise you will knock spots off me when it comes to archery, because it ain't gonna happen with me. It would not work. It'd get very messy very quickly.
I love the swords as well. I collect swords, actually.
Really?
So I love them. I have a Robin of Locksley sword. It's based off of, and I didn't know this when I got it. I just thought the sword was cool, but it's actually based off of the Locksley sword in Robin Hood Prince of Thieves. I had no idea. I just watched it again the other day and I was like, hey, I have that sword. And I got really excited for a few minutes because Alan Rickman as the Sheriff of Nottingham was amazing. He steals every second he is on screen. He commands it like that. Right there, I watched that movie just to watch him in that role. He's so good in it.
The wonderful Robin Hood Prince of Thieves, where strangely Robin Hood has an American accent.
That's an American accent, but every once in a while he'll say something like he's trying a little teeny bit, and I'm like, oh, give it up, Kevin. Give it up. No one's convinced by this. Just you give it up, man.
Yeah,
just own that you can't do it.
Yeah.
I've actually done roles where I had to have a British accent, so that was interesting. It was fun. Accents are always an interesting thing to try. They either work wonderfully or they can slightly get a bit muddled. Yeah. Well, and then here in America, we always think of like that, the very aristocratic London clip. That's what we think when we say, that's when we say British accent, that is where our brain has gone. Yeah, you think I suspect you're all thinking very, very RP in the pronunciation, or very, very perfect vowel sounds and whatnot. Yes. So how can we just, with regard to your future works, you obviously told us about that, but where are we able to we will put in some links obviously for you, but is there anything you'd like to just mention that our listeners can have a look at you on your website address, things like that? Yeah, if they go to Boundless Fantasy Books at Wix.com, they can find all of my books there, all of the trailers. I just uploaded the latest one that got finished, and that was for the prequel. Oh, just hit my microphone. And I'm on Facebook, the Boundless Fantasy page. That's the one. I'm the best at updating and keeping people and news and anything happening there because it's just really convenient. With the website, I actually have to go into the building part and put it in, so it's a little bit more trying. I am on Instagram. I am grudgingly on Twitter, and I am grudgingly on TikTok. I don't do as much as I should on those, but the best places are Facebook, Instagram, and the website. And that's where you can find me. And all of my books can be purchased on Amazon, and soon all of them will be available in digital form on multiple platforms. Many of them already are, but I had to wait until they were on the trilogy was on Kindle Unlimited, which is sort of like Netflix for books. But when they're on that platform, you can't have a wide release, so you can't have them on other digital platforms, but that's about to end, and then they will be going wide digital. So they'll be on like Barnes & Noble, and pretty much any of Barnes & Noble is big here, but pretty much any of the larger bookstores or like Google, Apple, all of those, they'll be available there as well.
Well, I want to say a huge thank you for coming on, Christen. I have enjoyed this, and I hope you have too, and I'm sure our listeners will enjoy it. And Gemma and Joanne did just want to say sorry that they weren't able to come on and speak to you on this episode. But it's who knows, in the future you may be able to pull it together, so we're all here. So as we always sign off on this, I think I have been talking of Codswallop this week, so I will finish on that. So I have been James, this has been Christen, and thank you so much for listening to us, and thank you for coming on, Christen. It's been wonderful.
Thanks for having me. I've loved it. I've loved just listening to your accent. So.